Hello, I'm Bernadine Scicluna, and I'm one of the principal curators at MUΖA. MUΖA is Malta's National Community Art Museum. I'm going to be talking to you about one of my favorite paintings. It represents the portrait of the Portuguese Grand Master Antoine Pinto de Fonseca. It was painted by the French artist Antoine Favray, who had come to Malta in 1744, and he stayed here for the rest of his life, with the exception of 9 years in Constantinople. Why is this one of my favorite paintings? It's got to do with the fact that I'm very, very fascinated by portraiture. And the reason for my fascination for this particular subject has got to do with the fact that ultimately human beings are interested in other human beings. We're all curious about each other, aren't we? So let's see how we're going to read this painting. What is the artist, through this portrait, telling us? So let's look at the face. Is it turned towards the side? No, it's frontal. What about the eyes? Are they looking directly at us? Indeed they are. And this is because Pinto wants to grab our attention, wants to hold our attention. So he's saying something about himself. So he's wearing a typical 18th century wig that would have been worn by people like himself, by the nobility, by the well-to-do of society at the time. He wears the typical ceremonial dress of the order, which was made of black silk, and you can see the 8-pointed cross. Then he has this lovely jabot, which is made of this very, very intricate lacework. And by the way, this is a painting. This is a tribute to Antoine Favray's technical competence. We also notice that this ceremonial dress has this ermine fur. Now, ermine fur was typically exclusive to royalty. So, Pinto, the Grand Master. So he adopts this pose, this stance of certain arrogance. He's very haughty. He is conveying authority. And because he is the most powerful person, or he was the most powerful person at the time in 18th century Malta, he's placed exactly in the center of the composition. But there are other things that we should take note of. Notice this particular gesture. He's got his arm open and it ends with an open hand. What is it? It is a gesture of welcome. He is inviting us into his world. He's inviting us into this painting. And if we had to draw an imaginary line along the arm, we notice that it actually continues through the neck and the edge of this curtain. It's a heavy and very rich velvet curtain. And when we think of a curtain, where does it take us? Well, at least to me, it takes me to the theatre. When the curtain is drawn open, the spectacle, the show is about to start. And this is exactly what's happening here. Something else that we should take note of. Where is his other arm? And his hand? How interesting. He places his hand in a very comfortable way, almost as though he's, caressing his cat or his dog. But there's no animal here. What we have is this crown. Crown. It's a closed crown, not an open crown. Now, a few minutes ago, I mentioned the ermine fur. There's a connection here. Ermine fur reminds us of royalty, reminds us of kings and queens. The same thing with the crown, and in this case, a closed crown. By Pinto having his hand placed on the closed crown, he is conveying a message. He's saying, well, you know, I am a Grand Master, but I am also the sovereign prince of this little island, this principality called Malta. This is very, very different from the spirit of submission with which Malta was granted to the order back in 1529. Well, we are in the 18th century here, and this was the time when the Order of St. John was shedding its religious character and becoming more and more secular. The order at this time wanted to resemble the royal courts of Europe. Now, let's face it, this Portuguese Grand Master was of aristocratic birth, like a lot of previous Grand Masters and the ones that followed him. Even the knights, they came from the great families of Europe. So aristocratic blood did run through their veins. So in a sense, perhaps Pinto was saying that, you know, by right, he had the authority to claim a certain sovereignty. And one thing to also point out is that Favray was following the style, the fashion of the time when it came to painting portraits. So this is what we refer to as the Grand Manner style. And the influence of this style comes from Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, Le Roi Soleil. And Louis XIV wanted to make himself appear larger than life, almost divine. This Grand Manner style started to be used by the various courts, the various aristocracies throughout all of Europe. And thanks to Favray, it reached our island as well. This painting is still meaningful to us, not only because of its subject, because we're still interested in anything that's got to do with the Order of St. John, not only because we're interested in Pinto, not only because we're fascinated by what is being represented and how all these silent messages still reach us today, but it's also got to do with the fact that portraiture, I mean, in a way, is a reflection of ourselves. As I said at the beginning, human beings are interested in other human beings. So the minute we see a portrait of a human being, we're interested in seeing how he is being remembered in this case. And we ask ourselves, if we had to have a portrait of ourselves painted or sculpted, what would we wear? How would we stand? How would we sit? Would we wear a wig? Would we have something accompany us? Would we have a person join us in our portrait? So it's all about memory, it's about posterity, it's wanting to live beyond one's death.